Good morning. You beat me to it, man. Yes, good morning. Great to see all of you here and everyone joining us online. Great to have you as well. And as Stacy said, I'm going to wrap up this short little series that we've been doing about outward facing, which of course is it's about having this posture about how we see people and look at the world and the difference that we can make, because we want to be difference makers. But what I want to talk about here this morning a little bit is just there's moments where being outward facing can have these discouraging moments where it can just feel like, oh man, like, is this worth it? Or is it like, am I doing any good with this? And that's just, that's part of life. But it's also part of, at times, being outward facing as a church, but also just as a follower of Christ. And we've all had these moments where there's something that we get into and we kind of become weary in it. Early this year, and we're late in the year, Angie and I decided that we would remodel our master bathroom, right? And of course, me being me, I'm like, and I got this, hon. I'm like, I'll do all the work on this. And, and we had big plans and all the things we wanted to do. And of course, it started from, just changing some fixtures and paint and stuff to let's rip out that wall, let's move that wall, so at one point in the project I clearly had 60 to 75% of our master bath down to the stud walls, right? And it literally moved walls and all this stuff. And of course, at first it's like, yeah, this is fun and I'm into this and, visions of what it's gonna be. And then it's like, I don't have that part. I'm gonna run down to Home Depot and I'll get that part and finish this up today. And then you go down to Home Depot and you get the part and you get back and then you forgot one of the other parts that you needed. So you run back and that was the wrong part and you go back. And and after a while, you're just like, I'm tired of going down to Home Depot late at night when I'd just rather be, watching TV or something like that. And if you ever experienced this, you get into a project like this and maybe you've got like energy and excitement and a vision of what you want to do. And then it's like the energy starts to wane and you're like, maybe I'll work on it tomorrow. Right? And I started getting slower and slower. And then, when the newness of it wears off, it gets a little old. You become discouraged as it's not coming along as fast as you thought, right? And I always have that problem that I think I can get things done way faster than what I ever can get things done in. So we still don't have our master bath done, but it's way down the road. And surprise, surprise, I don't know, when a week or two ago, Angie goes, hey, I hired a contractor to come in and just finish the bathroom. I was like, she was reading the discouragement on me and just like, yeah, I've run out of energy on this thing. And she wants to have her master bath back. So that's where that went. So what do you grow weary in doing, right? What are those things? I bet, if you think about it, there's moments where you grow weary in that thing and there's like a pattern there. There's something where like as it goes on and maybe the results don't come as fast as you wish they would have. Like that's a common thing. Or it's more difficult than you thought. Or it's just like there's multiple things that happen. And the truth is, in our culture, we've been a little conditioned to expecting results faster, that we want to tackle a project, or when we think about being outward facing, like, man, we're going to invest something in the community or we're going to help somebody out, and we want to expect results faster. We want to see, deep human transformational life change occur, like that. And it's just, and it can get a little discouraging. But when you think about it, what we face, that's somewhat normal because everything in our world has been so sped up. We have been conditioned to expect like instant results. Like we order something and it's like, well, I want Amazon to have it here tomorrow, right? If not today. This happened to me the other day. I went to turn on the TV and for whatever reason, I turned on the TV and the internet was just a little bit slow. And it probably only took 3/4 of an extra second for the menu to come up. And I was like, what? what's wrong with this thing? Why is the menu not gonna, And it's like, I noticed 3/4 of a second. It wasn't even a whole second, but I could tell, right? And it's like, what? But it's because everything is like that. Some of you are old enough to remember that, like, if you needed to use the internet at your house for something, there was this thing called dial-up. Yeah, and that's how you got to use the internet. Remember that? You would have to get your computer, right? You'd have to get it to do something. Now I just open up my computer and it's just like, it does it all on its own. But remember the days when you could hear your computer talking with other computers? Hey, we need to get on the internet. What's going on? I don't know. And it just like took forever, right? Or now, have you thought about this? When's the last time you needed to go someplace and you didn't know where it was? Maybe it was a restaurant or there was an address, somebody's house you're going to. And we're just so used to going, hey Siri, where is, such and such, right? It like instantly. For those of you who don't know this, there used to be a day when like you would have to get one of these things out and then drive at the same time. And I'm telling you, you can get an address off your phone faster than like you can even get one of these folded back up, right? Because like that was the thing, right? We've just been conditioned to expect results faster. And I think sometimes when we think about being an outward facing church, right, there are things that we want to do in a spiritual impact that we want to have in our community. Or maybe it's somebody in your life and like you're wanting to see them move closer to God or become a follower of Christ or like whatever it is. And there can be this thing where it's like, okay, we're doing these good things and where are the results? And we don't get the results right away and it can be discouraging. But in reality, some of the results that are deeper in nature, especially when we're talking about making a difference in the lives of human beings, like that takes time. And our mission, when you think about our mission as a church, loving people into the acceptance and freedom of Jesus Christ, that there's something very transformational that has to go on inside of them through this. It takes time. And our goal isn't about what is instant, right? We as a church, when we talk a lot, especially these days, about being difference makers and making a difference, when we think about making a difference, it is about making deep, lasting, ongoing, multi-generational differences in people's lives. And that doesn't always happen fast. And because of that, there can be parts of it that can be a little bit discouraging at moments. But we're not the first generation to experience that. We may be the first generation to experience, internet speeds at the rate we experience them because most generations never even had an internet, right? But we're not the first. And so there's things in scripture that speak to this. And there's one spot in particular that I want to look at this morning, and it's found in the book of Galatians. And if you want, you can go ahead and turn there. I'm going to be looking at a passage there. But to kind of set that up, I want you to think about the church in the first century. When you think about the church in the first century, Christianity was brand new. There were only a few churches and only a few Christ followers, and it could have been really easy for them to have simply become inwardly focused and said, like, there's only a few of us and there's a lot of people who don't like us and this is hard. Why don't we just become inwardly focused and would just take care of us and not worry about it? And there were moments where that's where they wanted to go because of discouragement and stuff. And so Paul, one of the early disciples, who wrote a lot of the New Testament, he writes to these churches in an area called Galatia, which is like modern day Turkey, where they would have been facing this sort of stuff. And he writes this wonderful letter to these churches. And he keeps pulling them back to what it means to live by faith in love. Faith in love. This is our way. And he walks through this whole thing. Then he gets to the end of the letter where he becomes really practical, right? This is the really practical part of the letter. And he offers some insight that I want to use here this morning in this very practical portion of this letter that he writes. So this is found in Galatians chapter 6. Let me read this to you. And starting in verse 9. If you don't have your Bible or your phone, you could say, hey, Siri, look up Galatians 6, 9 to 10, and probably will. Now that I said that out loud, some of you have phones that are doing that right now because Siri thought I was talking to your Siri, right? Okay, here it is, verse 9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers, right? And so he talks about this idea of doing good. Don't grow weary in doing good. And to be outward facing is to be doing good. It is to care. It is to accept. It's to find those moments where can I make a difference in somebody's life? I'm noticing people around me. And so when he talks about doing good for people, like it's the same kind of thing here. And he says, don't grow weary, because he knows there's a part of this where it's easy for us to grow weary in all of this. But that's our job in this. Now, a couple of things that I just want to point out in this passage. One is he uses a agricultural metaphor here, or illustration or analogy in this. And I think he does that on purpose. And in the New Testament, you will find lots of different types of metaphors that get used. Of course, there's agricultural, there's construction metaphors, there's legal metaphors, there's financial metaphors. You see all these different metaphors. And I think he picks a agricultural one on purpose here for a few reasons. One, if you think about this, think about a construction metaphor. In a construction metaphor, if there's something like a bathroom remodel, maybe, I don't know, right? It's like there's a start and there's an end. And if you're the person, right, that it's your project, you have control over that project all the way through, right? I electrocuted myself once or twice on this project. That's all on me. I'm the one in control on this thing. And a construction project is a project. That's how we think of it. But that's not the kind of metaphor that he uses here. He uses an agricultural one. And I think that's for a reason. When you think about agriculture, it's about living things, right? It's about things that grow and do things on their own, right? You don't lay a hammer down on its own and then you come back and later wow, that hammer, grew into, a screwdriver and did the electrical for you. It's not how it works, right? So a couple of things with this. One is, people are not projects. I think that's one of the reasons that he doesn't use a construction metaphor here, because people aren't projects. If people are your projects, you will grow weary of people and you'll become discouraged. Because if people are your project, you're gonna think of it as having control from beginning to end. And it's gonna be well, they didn't change the way I wanted them to change, right? Or they didn't change fast enough. I want some more results from these people. But here's the thing, people are not projects. And when people become projects, we become weary of people. But here's maybe the more important thing I'd want you to get out of this. If people are your projects, people will grow weary of you, right? Raise of hands. How many people love to be somebody else's project that they want to control? No, we don't like that as human beings, right? And so when we make people our projects, right, no matter how good our intent, they're going to get weary of us. We end up not doing a lot of good in this. So instead, he uses this analogy that is this agricultural one about planting and harvesting. And I want you to think about what that means, because, in one sense, when you think about doing good from an agricultural standpoint, this idea of sowing and reaping, faith is a necessity, because that's part of farming, right? I don't know how many of you are farmers. I've never been a farmer. I've known quite a few farmers, okay? And there's some things about farmers. You'll get a little of my commentary on farming here this morning, right? One, farmers have to be really smart. There's a lot of stuff they have to know about plants and the earth and tractors and like equipment. Like there's this vast range of things that they need to know. They also are not lazy. There's nothing lazy about farmers. I've never met a lazy farmer in my life. They are working before I get up, and it seems like they're still working, by the time I go to bed. But here's the other thing about farmers. They have to have faith because they don't get to control the sun. They don't get to control the rain. They don't get to make seeds grow. They can plant them, they can nurture them, but there's so much they don't have control of. And so there's a huge faith and trust component to this agricultural side. And I think that becomes important here. In fact, there's kind of a tip-off to this in this passage it's hard to get in just a pure English translation, but in verse 9 there, if you look at that again, it says, "For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." And that little phrase there, proper time, may not be exactly what you're thinking of. So in Greek, there's two words for time. There's chronos, which like we get chronological from, and that means time. So like if you want to know what time it is in Greek, you would use the word chronos. But this is the Greek word kairos. And unlike time, like something precise, it means something more akin to like a season. There's like this season that is a little bit more nebulous. And idios is the word that gets sometimes translated as proper, but it's hard to translate this word directly in English. Probably the most common way in ancient Greek that this idios gets translated into English is, and it's gonna sound completely different, but here's the word, peculiar, or unique. And so idios is like there's something peculiar about this in its own way, its own unique, peculiar way. And so what he's saying is, you do good. Our job is just to do good. Don't become weary of doing good just because you don't see the results that you want to see, just because it's getting difficult, just because it's going to take more than you thought. You keep doing good. And then on your schedule, your timing exactly the way you want, all the changes will occur. What it's saying is, you keep doing good the way a farmer plants seeds into the earth. And then in its own peculiar, its own unique timing and way, it will become a harvest. See, this is where faith comes in. Because faith is about, I have to let and trust that God is at work, and that the good things that we are doing in this world will become something. It's going to grow and become something. We don't have direct control over it, but part of the joy of this is we get to see what God does with it. We get to see it flourish and become something in this. And so part of what he's saying here in this moment is, church, you just keep doing good. Don't grow weary. Be outward facing. You keep working to make a difference. But trust that God is also at work, and that you're going to get to see something. There's going to be a harvest that's going to come, but it will come in its own unique way. People are going to be drawn to God, and how they become followers of God and who they become may not look exactly like what you would want them to be or how you would have spelled it out, but that's okay because God is at work, and we have to trust that. That's part of what he's getting at in all of this thing. So that's our job in all of this, that we approach doing good with faith. Now, I want to give you, before I go into like direct application on this, I wanted to take the time, and Stacy talked about this, to walk through a story. And the reason I want to walk through this story with you is because it is an example of you as a church over multiple decades doing good that impacted someone's life. In fact, the first moment of it happening actually goes back many, many decades. And I just want you to see how this thing of being outward facing and doing good impacts a life over time and where it goes and what it becomes. It is a story about a woman named Maria, and her husband Ryan are still very much a part of this church. But probably most of us don't know, in particular, Maria's story. She was born in the US, but actually grew up down in Rocky Point, Mexico. And to start off, I actually want you to hear her story from her. So let's start off and watch her story, just part of the beginning of her story here.
I grew up in Mexico with my grandma ever since I was 9 months old. She raised me and we lived in Rocky Point. She was a beautiful lady. Her name was Maria and I was named after her. At the time, she was a widow, her husband had died. I didn't get to know my grandpa. So she had to provide for 4 of us, little ones. And it was hard. We used to live on the outskirts of Rocky Point. It was hard. It was hard growing up, not having a mom and dad. I didn't understand. I was very I would question God of why me? Why is it that I don't have a mom, but I don't have a dad? How come I don't get to go to school for them to walk me in or walk me out? Celebration stuff like that. But it was beautiful at the same time, the way that she loved us.
You know, even with all of the difficulty that she grew up with, when we were talking, she shared just one of these really sweet memories that she has of being down in Rocky Point, and there was a ministry that would give out clothing. And she got this beautiful dress, and you just picture this little girl that gets this beautiful dress and how much she loved getting to just have and wear that dress around. And it would be decades later that she would find out that that ministry that gave away that dress actually got that clothing from us as a church. That decades ago, part of what we were doing was giving clothing and furniture and just helping churches and ministries out down there. And there was this connection that she had early on, even as a child, and didn't know about it. And as she grows up, and again, this wonderful grandmother that was raising her and her 3 brothers does pass away when Maria is in her teens. And she ends up moving back to the United States in her teens, graduates from high school, and joins the Army. And goes into the Army and is doing well. But the thing that probably no one would hardly know at that moment, one was her story, but also just given her story, just all the questions that she would have about spiritual things, that someone's talking about God and she's like, okay, but why wasn't God there for me? I didn't get to know my mom. I didn't get to know my dad. And these were deep questions for her that she was wrestling with and trying to process through all of this. But there were these moments of goodness that still came through. She talks about one moment where she went to a chapel service in the military. And the chaplain put together this service with the message, and especially there was a song in particular that she said that just spoke to her in a way that she had never seen God before. That as a young woman in the military who missed having that father influence in her life, to see God as a good father that could possibly be that in her life, she talks about that meant so much to her. And you just see this moment where it's there's some goodness. That chaplain, he didn't know her story. He didn't, he was just trying to pick out a song and pick a topic and work with something. But that little bit of goodness that he was trying to do for those servicemen and women that were maybe far from home, God used that in her life in this amazing moment that just helped her move spiritually when she had so many struggles going on. So Maria ends up being deployed goes overseas and serves. She comes back, still in the army, and she meets a guy who is in the Air Force, and his name is Ryan. And so this Army girl, right, and this Air Force guy, and I don't know how that works in a marriage. That seems like there could be some difficulty there. But they get married, they have a son, and now they get stationed in Tucson, and Ryan gets deployed to Afghanistan. And so I want you to think about this for a moment. Maria is now here with a young son, all by herself in Tucson. And this is when she starts to connect with Casas in a new way.
And we moved to Tucson, and he gets deployed. I'm here in Tucson by myself. Me and my son, we have no family. At that time, my son was in preschool. They called me and they told me that I needed to pick up my son and that he was not longer welcome in that school. At that time, my world went down because I didn't know what to do.
Monday.
I had a big project that it was due that I couldn't miss for work. So it was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And at that time, I called Casas at 4 o'clock on a Friday, and they answered,
You didn't call this out of the blue.
Out of the
just
blue.
like
I called them and I'm like, explain my situation. And I say, hey, I'm like, my son just got expelled from school. Like they say that he's doing A, B, and C. But I really need a place for him to go to school because I had no family.
and he's young. This is like preschool, right?
Preschool, he's 4 years old. So it's like, wow, like it was a moment of need that we were as a family at the lowest because my husband couldn't do anything from Afghanistan. I had to come in on Friday to bring the paperwork, and then I did that, and they're like, okay, on Monday he can start, and we're gonna work with him. It was the most beautiful feeling. Like we felt like, wow, like how can as a Casas like love him so much.
I think about what she said at the end there. That was the most beautiful feeling. Casas loved him so much. That was a moment of goodness for her. You know, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Every church, every Christian has a superpower. And that superpower is what? Love. Love is our superpower, friends, right? And so in this moment that suddenly she is by herself here in Tucson, and with her work in the Army, she had this thing that following Monday that was like a you cannot miss this kind of thing, but there's no family. They hadn't built friendships yet here in Tucson yet. She had no place to turn. And she calls this church, your church, up and just feels this kind of love. She talks about one of the preschool workers that she worked with who even said, listen, just Monday, just know things are covered. Just come on in. It was Twyla, one of our preschool workers who's still here and a part of us. And Twyla just came alongside her and saw a mom who just needed some love and some help and just loved her. And what is remarkable about this is when you understand Maria's story, right? There's a part here where God does something really wonderful in her spiritual questioning through this chaplain and what happens there. But there were also some moments that she experienced other churches that she just said, I felt judged and I felt pushed away, and it was like, and she had some resonance about churches at this point. But all of a sudden, right, there is a church and there are Christians who are loving her and loving her son in a way that's pulling her back towards this journey with God. And as it goes through this, all of a sudden, these moments begin to stack. Right? It's like there's a moment of goodness here, and there's a moment of goodness here, and there's a moment of goodness here. And before she realizes it, she's becoming more and more curious about this church. She actually starts coming to a few of the services around here. until it leads to a moment where in coming to this, she's got these deeper questions about God and what that means. Ever have a moment where there was a deep question that you had that was frustrating you about God or spiritual things that and you wanted to push away from God? And maybe you had someone that told you something about God and you were like, okay, whatever. And maybe you had a moment where someone loved you in a way that made a difference, right? It's one thing to be told you need Jesus. It's another thing to experience Christ's love through one of Christ's followers. That's powerful. And that's what she started to experience in all of this. And so as she started coming on a more regular basis, her husband, Ryan, finished his deployment. He came back, and the two of them started coming together to Casas here. And not long after that, we got to an Easter Sunday. And some of you may remember this Easter Sunday where we handed out rocks to everyone on the Easter Sunday. And so on that Easter Sunday, there was an invitation that I did at the end of that and just said, hey, if you're at a place where you want to become a follower of Christ, I invite you to do that. And you can do that as simple as praying this prayer with me. And I did that. And at the end of that, I just invited anyone who prayed that prayer with me for the first time, to come forward. And I remember Maria and her son coming forward because they were the very first ones there. By the time I could even walk down there, they were there. And Maria explained that to me. She said, I prayed that prayer, but there was still this part of me that just felt but I shouldn't go down there. I'm not a good enough person to actually take that step in this. She said, there's all these boxes. I felt like I still needed to check in this. But she said, my son Ryan prayed that prayer at the same time, and he didn't have any of that problem. He grabbed my hand. He's like, Mom, we're going down there right now. And so the two of them came down here in that moment. But then there was this other moment that came. We do a Discovering Jesus class. And so we put that together, and we had some of you that were volunteers that were a part of that. And she went to that. Her husband joined her with that. And he's actually been a Christian for a long time prior to that. And it became this thing that really touched them in a very deep, deep way. And that class became the next good moment in her life in all of this.
And then on that time, it actually was a beautiful thing because my husband, Ryan, and we went to the class, and that was the most beautiful.
So he came with you to
Yes, to the class.
And he actually, he grew up in church.
Everything. And he never pushed God on me and said, you must be like this. He let me walk my own journey and let me discover God in my own way. And that's so beautiful because that's my husband, for him not to push that. So now it's like a beautiful thing.
Right.
Like I said, and I am grateful I did that class because after that it's when I wanted to do more. It's when I felt love, accepted, and I was free. I was able, like I said, to be me. And ever since then, I've been this is me.
And can I say good job, Ryan, right? You didn't make your wife your spiritual project in that. And you saw how she responded to that, didn't you? To have someone in her life, Ryan, who was also pouring good things into her life, but not in a way that was controlling or not in a way that made her feel like a project. And as she experienced that and became a follower of Christ and then became a part of that class and just started to grow, and by the way, I love that clip because she essentially lays out the mission of our church in there where she's and I felt loved and accepted and free. I'm yes. And I didn't prompt her on that or anything. I was she just that just came out of her mouth when we were talking on this. But then it hit me, of course it did. Because she didn't need to have someone say, this is the mission of this body of believers, because she experienced you as a body of believers treating her that way. See, that is not growing weary of doing good. When we treat people in a way that they experience the acceptance and the love of freedom of Jesus in just the way we're treating them, all of that right? That's like nurturing that soul. That, it becomes this thing that something good begins to come out of all of that. And so through all of that, one of the beautiful things has been to watch in Maria's life this kind of transformation where there were all of these different people, and many of you as a church, in an outward-facing kind of way, were doing good things in her life that grew and became this beautiful thing. But the transformation of watching her become so outward-facing, that as she has been blessed by God through so many people, she has become the kind of person that is outward-facing and doing good things in the lives of others. In fact, not long after that Easter, we did a trip down to Mexico with our students to help build homes down there. And Maria found out about that, and she wanted to be a part of it. She actually volunteered in our student ministry to go and be a part of that. And when we did that, guess which city we went to? Rocky Point, where she grew up. And so I got to go on that trip with her, and there was this beautiful thing where, like, we got down there, and what she expressed about this thing of, like, it's like, this is where I started, and I get to see how God has brought me full circle all the way back to where I started, but how he's changed me in so many ways in this. And so she wanted to be baptized. And so one of the things that she wanted in Rocky Point was to actually be baptized in Rocky Point.
When I was baptized, it was being able to do it where I was raised. It was like this connection, like the little Maria got to meet the Maria, and there we closed it, and it was the beautiful like transformation in a way that I went back for her, that she's okay. And that I am now, even though I passed through a lot of hurts, I would not change that, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here today and being able to share this beautiful story of how beautiful God has worked with you.
Yeah. Her story of what God did in circling all back around is so amazing. And the thing that I want you to take away from that story is that all along the way, God was using this church, and he was using you, and he was using Christians from other churches as well. But this is how God loves to work. And so when we think about being an outward-facing church, I want us to take Paul's words to heart. Don't grow weary in doing good, because this is our way. When you came in, you were handed a card like this. Pull this card out for just a second, because I want to just take a minute and applicate this just a little bit different. Maybe pull out a pen if you have one. And I want you to think on this side where it says make a difference, who is the Maria in your life? And if there's a name that pops into your head, write that name down. Maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a family member. And you just say, I care about this person. Or maybe you just say, God, it just feels like God's kind of put this person in my life, and maybe there's some good that I can do, or maybe this is a person I care about. And just be thinking about that and praying for that person. When we think about doing good, I want you to think about all the different ways that this happens. Sometimes doing good means in a real tangible way. It is about just blessing someone. It's helping them through a difficult moment. It's an act of kindness. Sometimes doing good it's literally going on a trip, like to Mexico. It's volunteering and being a part of something that is your church, that is helping foster something good within the church through the time that you spend volunteering. Doing good sometimes is just having the right kind of conversation, where someone they need to talk through something with someone, and they don't need to be someone's project. They just need to be a human being that is cared about. And you get to have a conversation with them that just helps them sort through something. Sometimes it's just praying for them. Sometimes it's just supporting your church or your ministry in a tangible way. When you think about her story, there were all of these different moments where all of those different things were taking place. And so I want to leave you with this challenge, and it's this: find a way to intentionally do good and to keep doing good in multiple different ways. And I want to leave you with this as well. When we think about our year-end giving campaign, and I'll be sending you a letter out about that if you haven't already got one later this week. It's about this. The reason we have a year-end campaign is because there is good that we want to do in our church, and there is good that we want to do in our community, and there is good that we want to do all over the globe. Because every time we do good as a church, in the same way a farmer takes a seed and plants it in the earth and then waits with faith and hope and patience and care and nurturing, that's what we do. We want to be the church that is planting those seeds all over the place, and then with faith, waiting on God, nurturing it, caring for it. And so that year-end gift matters. I want you to be thinking about who you could invite maybe to Christmas Eve or to a Sunday service that might be that good that they need for that next step. And maybe write down the thing that you want to do next on this. On the other side of that card is a QR code for the calendar. So if there's something maybe you would invite somebody to, there's a number of different calendar events on there for you. And for that year-end gift or for giving, there's a QR code on there for how to give. And I want to challenge all of us that there is no better place to invest your time and your resources, right? Or your finances in a place that has that long view of planting goodness into the soil of this world, that God might change hearts and lives and transform this world in ways only He can. Don't grow weary of doing good. I'm going to close this in prayer here in a moment, but let me say this. If you're a guest here this morning, it is so good to have you. And if you are a guest, I'd love to shake your hand, welcome you. I'm going to be right over here by the high top tables over here, invite you to come over and let me have a chance to welcome you. If you'd love to have someone pray for you this morning, I want to encourage you to go maybe let someone in our prayer spot pray for you here this morning. Why don't you stand and I'll close this in prayer here. Let me pray. Father, we just thank you for the goodness that you've invested in all of us. And we just thank you for all the people that we've had in our lives, maybe people that we don't know or people that knew us well, that invested that good, that did something beautiful in our spiritual journey. And in the same way that you did that in Maria's life, and she is so outward facing and all the beautiful things that you're doing in and through her, I pray that you would continue to do that through us as a church in big ways and in small ways. And we pray this in your Son's name. Amen. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you next week.